All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome aboard my brief. You're absolutely going to be blown away by the topic we're going to talk about today. I guarantee you're going to be blown away, and that's not just some sort of salesmanship or anything. It's actually the truth. Most of you have never heard of or talked about what we're about to talk about, and it literally is saving lives, changing lives, and making money. Right? Making money is great, folks, but you're not a pharaoh. They're not going to put it in your casket and let you take your money with you. So, if you could potentially profit while also helping to save and change lives, that is an absolute win-win. Let's get a quick waypoint zero, so to speak. I'm a former Navy fighter pilot, so I'm gonna talk like this. Um, did everybody survive the meltdown? Isn't this funny? Why do I have this up on the screen? Well, as a young ensign in the United States Navy, now I'm really going to age myself. In 1991, I started investing in trading. Like, I don't know, what was it, 25 or $50 a month to the USAA Aggressive Growth Mutual Fund or whatever it was, which was a lot of money for me as a young ensign back then. But folks, so I've been doing this since 1991. And do you know how many times I've heard, oh, this is the end, or this is awful, or we're never going to survive this? Like about 10 times. I mean, it's comical. I mean, I remember sitting in the ready room of a fighter squadron in Miramar during the dot-com boom. Oh my God, the stocks are going to zero. We're never going to survive this. And then we did. And then I was in the Chicago Board of Trade. I was in the Chicago Board Options Exchange for the global financial crisis. Oh my God, we're all going to die. That's the end. Stocks will never recover. And then we literally never looked back. The main reason we never looked back in 2008 is what? This is all, I call this MacGyver. This is the MacGyver market. It's up here on a straw, bubble gum, and a paperclip. This is all the Fed. This is all BS and government printing money and government intervention with which, over a beer or two, we could talk about it. But my point being is, if you didn't buy this most recent dip like 3, 4 weeks ago, you're a fool. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, we always survive these. Now, one day there might be, God forbid, a day we don't survive, but it ain't going to be anytime soon. Remember the folks in the Hamptons and Wall Street and Jamie Dimons and all the beautiful people need this to go up and to the right. They can't have it implode, right? So I just want to give us a quick waypoint zero check. This is where we're starting from, right? If in the past month or two you were freaking out, remember, for every panicked seller, there was a happy buyer, and you're looking at him. I tell my folks at Top Gun Options, never be 100% fully invested in equities. You need to 50%, 25% in cash at all times. Why? Because when we do have one of these pullbacks, you walk in and make some serious money. Okay. So, good stuff. Let's go ahead and get airborne. And you're not going to believe how I'm going to start this. How many of you woke up this morning? Well, most of you did since you're paying attention. How many of you woke up this morning and said thank you? Said thank you to, I don't care what word you use, God, source, the universe, just to, in general, like, I'm awake. I have a roof over my head. I have internet access. You're on a brief right now. Look at this, Kathy Kalparek. I love those answers, folks. Gratitude, right? Ladies and gentlemen, how many of you did a little bit of gratitude and then got up and maybe did some yoga, some breath work, right? Or a little bit of meditation, right? David, one of the world's largest hedge fund managers, says he meditates twice a day, man, morning and then in mid-afternoon. Gratitude, ladies and gentlemen, come from a place of gratitude. 90% of investing and trading is what? Emotional. If you aren't centered, if you are trading from a place of lack, how many of you are in this brief because I need to make money? I want to make money. Folks, that comes from a place of lack. If you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I have just about everything I need in my life right now. I'm doing pretty good. You'd be amazed at how God, or whatever word you want to choose to use, the universe responds to that type of energy. So here's my mission objective for my brief this afternoon. I'm going to show you a sector that isn't set to explode. It is exploding, and it might just save the world. How you can profit while also helping to save and change the lives of others, and maybe even yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Matthew Buckley. My call sign is Whiz. No offense, you can call me that. I'm Matthew to my mom or my wife if I'm in trouble. To everybody else, I'm Whiz. I earned that call sign flying the F-18 Hornet for the United States Navy for about 15 years. I graduated from the Navy Fighter Weapons School, which many of you call Top Gun, where I was an adversary pilot. I was a bad guy. I deployed on board Lincoln and Kitty Hawk for Operation Southern Watch and deployed for Operations Noble Eagle and Enduring Freedom. The hell does this have to do with trading, Whiz? Everything. You don't join the Navy to get rich and, that's just clearly not why you joined the Navy. I joined the Navy to see the world, fly airplanes off the pointy end of a ship, and deliver justice to bad guys around the globe. But I was always interested in finance. And when I was a young naval aviator, I showed you that timeline back in the day, I learned that trading is a form of combat. Somebody's going to win and somebody's going to get their rear end handed to them. So I started applying everything I was learning flying a fighter jet, having a strategy, implementing tactics, contingency planning. Right before I even got airborne, I knew if something bad happened, what I was going to do. Managing risk, right? Now, some of you are sitting in this brief going, okay, this guy's inverted over the skies of Fallon, Nevada at Top Gun, and he's going to talk to me about managing risk. Yeah, I am. As a fighter pilot, I love myself too much to go out and die or do something stupid. Flying fighters is dangerous enough. We have to minimize and eliminate all known risks. Well, guess what happened? I had a very brief airline career. The morning of September 11th, I was packing for my first trip as a pilot for American Airlines. I saw the planes hit the towers. I raced out to Naval Air Station Fort Worth in Texas, where I was flying F-18s in the reserves. And I briefed with the F-16 guys next door, and we set up a combat air patrol over the Southwest United States. So I went from potentially flying in an airliner that day to shooting one down. Long story, separate conversation. What happened? Well, I got a letter a week later from American Airlines that said, "Dear crew member, you're furloughed," which is a polite airline term for laid off. What did I do? I had to trade. I had to pay the mortgage. I had my bride, my 8-month-old son. Man, I was in a bad place. So I really focused on my trading, and I now that I dedicated full time to it, I blew the doors off of it. So much so that I popped up on the radar of one of the largest volatility options trading firms, headquartered right there in those beautiful windows. That was our trading floor, right there in the Chicago Board of Trade. There's part of our trading floor. I helped build a hedge fund when I was there. I helped build some of you traded at Options House. I helped build that retail brokerage called Options House. And I was the managing director of strategy for this multi-billion-dollar vol arb firm. And I also built the Options News Network. We were the CNBC for options. John and Pete Najarian back in the day before they split, they'd pay lip service to options. I dedicated 24/7 shooting on the floor of the SIBO, giving you all an inside look into that. I jokingly tell people I was Valentine in trading places. But ladies and gentlemen, I learned that there's no such thing as a smart money. How do I know that? Because I destroyed them in the COVID crash. As Bill Ackman and Kyle Bass and all these guys were on TV crying during the COVID market crash that we need to shut the markets down and, take a break. No, I pounded it into the dirt. We made $2.5 million in 3 weeks at Top Gun Options, pounding the market into the dirt as all the quote smart money got destroyed. Remember that? That was awesome. Also wrote another book about how I left the Navy and went to Wall Street. And right now I have a podcast. You want to check this out, folks, called the Max Afterburner Podcast, ranked in the top 2.5% of podcasts in the world. There's over 3.3 million podcasts. I'm in the top 2.5%. What's this have to do with trading, Whiz? This is my passion. This is how you can potentially profit, and this is how you can save and change lives. The No Fallen Heroes Foundation. You ready for this? Why did I start the No Fallen Heroes Foundation, and how can I make money off of this? Well, ladies and gentlemen, quick bio, real quick. I was born in South Jersey, one of 6 kids, typical Irish Catholic family, South Philadelphia, South Jersey. I was an altar boy. I mean, my family made the Pope look Jewish. I mean, it just didn't get any more Catholic than us. And then sadly, my sister Monica, my middle sister, she was a freshman at Villanova University, and when she was killed by a drunk driver, it destroyed my parents. It destroyed my family. It changed the arc of my life. Sadly, around that time, I was also sexually abused. Why do I bring this up? Because that childhood trauma, I just kind of buried. Then I went in the United States Navy, ladies and gentlemen, and flew fighters for 15 years. Flying fighters for 15 years, guess what happened? I lost 16 brothers. 16 brothers in aviation mishaps. Since that time, I've also lost 4 F-18 brothers to suicide. The groomsman in my wedding, Captain Eric Swenson, Swede, one of my best friends. Beautiful bride, 5 kids, put a bullet in his head. It was a horror. And then I'm going to be brutally honest with you folks. I went from a fighter squadron where you trust the men and women in that organization with your life, or they're not a part of it for much longer, and went to Wall Street. There were people in that firm that would, I'm not joking, would push their own mother in front of a bus for a buck. It was gross. I could not have been more separated from my bride, my kids, my family, my mission. I had a lot of dark nights of the soul. I was spiraling the drain and was about to check out. Then, after my brother Swede killed himself, I found out 22 veterans on average are ending their lives every day by their own hand. So in the year 2020, I printed money in that COVID crash, like I told you. But I looked at my bride, Susie, and I said, you know what? Swede's gone. We just made more money than we ever need in our life. Why don't we start a foundation to try and end veteran suicide? Great idea. And we did it. But we sat there looking at a whiteboard going, how do you keep a veteran from killing themselves? You know, buy him a suit, write a resume, help him pay the rent. Around that time, a buddy of mine said, hey, there's a group of Navy SEALs and Special Forces operators that go down to Mexico and they do psychedelic assisted therapy. And there's a really cool group going in a couple weeks. Would you like to go? And I said, man, go down to Mexico and do drugs with Navy SEALs. It sounds like a great weekend. Sign me up. Ladies and gentlemen, I had no idea what I was in for. How many of you have seen the movie Lone Survivor or read the book, Lone Survivor? The movie obviously had Mark Wahlberg in it. Well, so I flew into San Diego. Why? Because if you do what I'm about to tell you in San Diego, you're a felon. If you do it an hour south in northern Mexico at a beautiful clinic overlooking the Pacific, it can save and change your life. So I went down to Mexico with Marcus Luttrell, Jared Taylor, JT, one of the founders of Black Rifle Coffee, JJ, who's also a Navy SEAL. He was one of Marcus's teammates. And then if you're a college football or NFL fan, his name is Robert Gallery. He was an All-American at Iowa, Hawkeyes. He just got into the College Football Hall of Fame, too. And then he played for the Raiders for a long time. This guy was on death's door. Drugs, alcohol, brain injuries. All of us were in an extremely bad place, ladies and gentlemen. And what transpired that weekend saved and changed my life. Let me just give you the Cliff Notes. And choose whatever word you want to use, folks. I lost my faith for 30, 40 years. I reconnected with my faith. I reconnected with my sister. I was a drinker. I don't know if you could be a good drinker. I was a bad drinker, folks. I couldn't look at alcohol for up to a year after this treatment. It made me physically ill if I smelled it. Ladies and gentlemen, I came home from that retreat and I said, this is how we're going to end veteran suicide. Guess what happened last week? I walked into the VA. The Secretary of Veterans Affairs invited me up and said, Whiz, we love what you're doing in the No Fallen Heroes Foundation. We need to act. 2 weeks ago, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you saw it in the cabinet meeting. After Secretary Collins gave his little 1 minute, I can't stand these cabinet meetings. They're like worshiping a king, like bowing. But Secretary Collins gave his 1 minute brief, and Trump looked at him and said, hey, what's going on with veteran suicide? I have never in my life heard a president ask about veteran suicide, let alone the answer. Secretary Collins said, Mr. President, we're throwing money at it and it ain't working, but there are very promising things going on with psychedelics, and there are nonprofits out there doing some good work. Ladies and gentlemen, I fell out of my chair. And a week later, I was meeting with the secretary in Washington, D.C. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the way. We provide healing grants to veterans, first responders, and family members to sit with these medicines. But here's why you're here. Venture capitalists, Wall Street is piling into this space right now. Now, if you want a couple resources, I'm going to get into the investing side of this, but on your own tonight, you could binge watch How to Change Your Mind. It's a great book by bestseller Michael Pollan. He was just on Oprah. Or you can watch this. It's 4 episodes, an hour each. You can do it in a night. So make sure you check out How to Change Your Mind. I mean, hell, there was a Showtime series called Billions. You know, Bobby Axelrod, the fictional hedge fund manager, is modeled after who? Steve Cohen, the big hedge fund manager. And they are into psychedelics. Speaking of Stevie Cohen, the guy is piling money into psychedelics. We're going to talk about Cybin. We're going to talk about the publicly traded psychedelic stocks that are exploding, especially with RFK's attention to them. Look at Blake Mycoskie. I'm giving $100 million to psychedelic research. The guy, he started Tom's Shoes or whatever it's called, right? Now, before I forget, let me give you this link. This is a great guide that you need right now. This is, let me copy this and throw it in the chat box. Everyone, ladies and gentlemen, this is the psychedelic medicine. I don't like using the word drug pipeline. You see this, there's a bullseye in the middle, and the closer these companies are to the bullseye is closer to approval. And you can see the different medicines on the outside. I've sat with Ibogaine. That's the first medicine I did. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you an opportunity to invest in this company in a couple minutes. But I sat with 5-MeO-DMT and Ibogaine. But let me blow this up a little. And then you can see psilocybin over here, and then MDMA and some of the other medicines around this bullseye. But you can click on the bullseye and then kind of zoom in. Some of these are publicly traded companies. Atai, MindMed, Cybin. I'm going to show you some of these publicly traded names. These are an absolute must buy. Now, we're going to talk about the risk involved in these, obviously. I mean, these technically are biotech-like stocks, right? And before I forget, let me give you this link. So tomorrow, we're going to talk about Demerex. It's a privately held company healing with Ibogaine. I just told you about my battle with alcohol. AUD is alcohol use disorder. Dr. Deborah Mash, she's the queen of Ibogaine. She's been working with this compound since 1993, is opening an investment round for small investors. I think the minimum's $25,000. If you want to come to this brief, I just put the link in there. But she up here in this slice right there is Demerex right there. See where it says Demerex, Neuroibogaine, and AUD. Folks, there isn't a single veteran, first responder, or family member we've treated with Ibogaine who has come home and said, you know what, waste of time, Whiz, that was awful, or I'm worse. Not a single one. And every person destroyed an addiction: coffee, porn, alcohol, heroin. There's a study: 85% of heroin addicts, after sitting with a single dose of Ibogaine, couldn't even look at the stuff for up to 3 years. And they ended the study at 3 years. They're like, if you go back to using heroin after 3 years, it wasn't the Ibogaine. You had a 3-year break because of this medicine. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to start digging into names. I'm throwing resources at you here to show you how potentially explosive this sector is. I just published this they just published this op-ed today that I wrote. Psychedelic medicine saved my life after my Navy career. Now Congress must act to provide access for our veterans. So, ladies and gentlemen, the fact that this VA secretary is open to psychedelics. Did you see what happened in the great state of Texas 2 days ago with my brother Marcus Luttrell? One of the reddest states in this country, anti-criminal, anti-drug, approved a $50 million Ibogaine initiative. Okay. So the first psychedelic revolution, folks, hippies and, drug rugs and mala beads being anti-government. This psychedelic revolution is being led by veterans. Whiz, what's this have to do with investing and trading? Absolutely everything. Let's go look at some of the names that are set to explode. And this is a God moment because Atai is up 11% right now. They knew I was getting into this brief. I would buy Atai, ATAI, with both hands. Now, today, hell, there's over 2 million or 1.5 million shares traded. Good news just came out with Atai. These names, I'm going to give you the names first, and then we're going to talk about them all. The next name I would buy with both hands is Cybin, CYBN. It's $6.50, folks. And yes, you can do the options. Go out into the future and buy some upside calls. The stock's at 6 right now. Go out to November of 25 and buy some, buy the 12.5 calls and put them in a filing cabinet and forget about them. And why? Because I'll tell you what I believe is going to happen to all these names. Another one I would buy, Atai, Cybin, MindMed, MNMD. MindMed. It's also a $6 stock. Why? And don't trust me. You should, but let me show you what Oppenheimer said about MindMed. Where is it? Downloads. Let me pull this up real quick. A research report. There it is. Right there. So, ladies and gentlemen, this ain't Whiz. This is Oppenheimer. Look at the share price when they did this report. It was $5. Just allow me to round up. $4.92, $5. Look at their 12 to 18 month price target. $25 in MindMed. Why? Because with a single dose of their compound called MM120, it cured, listen to me when I say that word, cured potentially millions with what is called GAD, generalized anxiety disorder. There are, I think, 40 million Americans that suffer from GAD. This medicine, ladies and gentlemen, is absolutely insane. Look at what Oppenheimer says. Like, hey, this is an attractive call option, meaning I'd get into this thing now before it explodes, right? MM120 is life-saving and changing. So MindMed is the other name that I would buy. Now, let me go out to Jan of 2027. And look, there's a lot of open interest in these call options. Let me tell you what I believe is going to happen. Let me go back to the psychedelic wheel here. Here's what's going to happen in this space. And I almost want to use the word guarantee, but obviously you can never guarantee anything, right? But I'm going to say almost guarantee. If you are the CEO of Pfizer, Moderna, Eli Lilly, Johnson & Johnson, first of all, folks, there's no money in healing, right? They need customers. They don't need healed people. That's why they're called drugs and not medicines. There is no way, if I'm the CEO of Pfizer sitting on my 12th floor on a huge wad of cash, I'm going to let these companies do this. I'm going to swoop in with my size 12 checkbook and stroke a big check and take the whole thing. That's exactly. And let me be clear, I don't want that to happen, right? Because one of two things is going to happen when big pharma just comes in here and scoops these things up. They're either going to shelve them or they're going to do what? Okay, we're going to change one molecule here and charge you, 20 grand a month type of thing. So for now, I'm going to speak as an investor, as a fund manager and stuff like that. I'm almost shaking when I talk like this because this really isn't me. I want that to happen. I want MindMed. I want to see on CNBC one morning, breaking news, a company called MindMed, who had a psychedelic, was just acquired by Eli Lilly for $1 trillion and the stock's up 1,000%. I want that to happen. Now, let me talk as Whiz. I absolutely don't want that to happen. So I'm like in this weird position. But let me remind you, folks, whatever word you choose to use, God, universe, source, divine, Mother Earth, all of these compounds were put on this planet for us to heal. You don't need a dude in a lab coat and a beaker to heal. But I'm here to talk about investing and potentially making money. So I have to talk through this, okay? So those names, there's other names in there. Let's say, Wiz, I am really bad at picking winners, so to speak. Don't do it then. Guess what? There is a psychedelic ETF. That's $11. Look what's in. It's called SIL, PSIL. Look at what you get in SIL. You get some MindMed, you get some Compass. I didn't talk about Compass. Atai and Cybin. These are my 4 favorite. But there's also some other really good names in here as well. Why not just buy the ETF, folks? It's $11 or trade options on the ETF. Okay? So, all of these names you could buy individually, but what a waste. Why don't you just buy the ETF? Okay, let's go look at SIL real quick. PSIL. Okay. Yeah. Go out, trade the options on it. And these, there's not too many expirations yet. If I could, I would go as far out in time as I can. But as far out in time as I can is, just under a year from now. But these options are cheap, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, there's a big bid-ask spread because there's not a lot of activity in these things. But you, being in this brief right now, folks, have an incredible opportunity to beat the crowd into this space. Now, I'm going to transition real quick from talking about psychedelics to crypto real quick. Why? Because I don't like crypto. I don't get Bitcoin. I don't get whatever, Ether, Solana, Doge, Trump coin. I don't get any of it. I think all of that is BS. However, I like the infrastructure. I like the underlying. I like the computing. I like the power requirements. I like all of those things. So if you don't want to invest in maybe these publicly traded psychedelic names or potentially invest in Demorex, if you join me in tomorrow's brief, here's what you can do. Look at Sabra, SBRA. Sabra is an infrastructure name. Let's just look at like a 10-year chart. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Sabra is a healthcare REIT. And look at this, a 7% dividend. We have Top Gun Options members who bought the shares. They get a great dividend and they sell covered calls against their stock position. We got people making 10 to 15% a month on Sabra trading the call options against their long stock and getting the dividend, folks. Sabra is an infrastructure play. And what do I mean by that? And in full disclosure, and I'll show you this right now. Where is it? Let me open this. I am an investor in a private REIT right now called Healing Realty Trust. Years ago, when I got back from Mexico, and I saw that these medicines eventually will become legal for therapeutic use in the US, there's no infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, you will not be going to your doctor's office in 2 years to do an MDMA therapy for 6 hours. You can't. Where's he going to do it? On it in examining room 5 with the wax paper table and a National Geographic from 1982 on the table? Ladies and gentlemen, the infrastructure does, well, it does exist now because we're building it. So Healing Realty Trust, we are scooping up existing medical facility. Like I live right down the street in God's Waiting Room, Boca Raton, from the hospital. Remember 20 years ago, there was no such thing as a dialysis or urgent care, anywhere. It was, you had to go to the hospital. They pushed all of that stuff out of the hospital. Now they are complexes. So what we're doing is acquiring existing MOB, medical office buildings, and repurposing them for when, not if, these medicines are legal for therapeutic use. This is also a great way to go. This is a private, we're debating right now if we want to go public. I don't want to go public. I don't like dealing with shareholders and all that type of stuff. I'd rather stay. We're already making a ton of money in this space. What I'm getting at is you can't invest in our REIT right now because it's closed. And you can Google it. Healing Realty Trust. Piper Sandler just gave us $50 million. So we're closed to investors. But if you're like, wow, doing the infrastructure of these medicines sounds a little, less iffy than investing in the individual names. Sabra, 7% dividend. You could sell some covered calls against your long stock, and it's a solid name. It's not going out of business tomorrow. Why? Because we have existing clients. We have Cardinal Health. We have a bunch of huge, multi-billion-dollar companies that are tenants in our places. So Sabra is one name. Let me go to the next one. AHR. American Healthcare REIT. It's doing the same thing as my public or private REIT. It's doing the same thing as Sabra. But check this out. It went public a year ago, technically, close. February of last year, it went public. AHR. It went public in February of last year. It is up 158%. I want that to sink in. So, of course, the other partners are like, you want to stay private? They show me this. I'm like, that's a good point. They're like, dude, AHR it IPO'd at what, $10? And look at where it is right now. Or whatever it IPO'd at, I forget. So, ladies and gentlemen, if the publicly traded names make you a little iffy or something like that, take a look at the infrastructure. Oh, and by the way, look at AHR. What does it also have? It ain't insignificant. They have a 3% dividend. So whether it's Sabra or and this is cash flow positive like our REIT and also Sabra. These names, ladies and gentlemen, and technically, they're recession resistant. That's a big mouthful to say. Why? Even if Donald Trump keeps blasting trade wars, God forbid, a strike against Iran and the nukes, there are so many potential. Let me pull the S&P 500 chart up real quick. Just have it in the background as we're talking. There are a lot of folks out there saying what? This is a dead cat bounce, Whiz. We just bounced and we're going to do another one. Okay, great. I don't care. I'm an options trader. I print money up, down, or sideways. But even if it does this, folks, those office spaces ain't going, just because we're in a recession potentially, doesn't mean people aren't going to do their dialysis or, get their eyes done or whatever. Healthcare, it's kind of like the mortuary industry or undertakers. It's always people are always going to be dying, so it's always going to be making money. So those names, folks, if you wanted to dip your toe in the water, would be the infrastructure names, Sabra and AHR. Okay? Sabra and AHR. Both have solid dividends. Both are cash flow super positive, and they have potential good upside. However, back to our psychedelic pipeline, this is where you see the explosive potential, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? So, I can say that one more time. It's the names that I like, starting right here. Atai, ATAI, Atai Life Sciences. It's up 10% today, folks. Okay. Folks, it's some drinking money. Okay. $1.58 on a tie. I would buy a couple thousand shares of this thing and let them cook. The next one would be, where is it? Cybin, CYBN. And before I forget, and I think I have this on a slide. Let me go back to that slide so I can talk through some of these notes here. Yeah. Let me do this one. So, yeah, you can invest to save and change lives. You can potentially see explosive returns in these names. Or I'm going to give you a warning right now. This is the internet 1999. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean this. There's a Netscape and a pets.com, and there's an Amazon and a Google. You choose the right two, you're rich for the rest of your life. You choose the wrong two, you're broke. What I'm getting at is that all of these names, folks, have obviously inherent risk. But I, after having sat with that medicine and that up here, that medicine and that medicine, I can tell you where I am putting a ton of my personal funds right now in these sectors, slices. And, and I don't care how you feel about any of the people I'm about to, and I shouldn't have to put a disclaimer in front of this. It's sad that our country's in this position. Last year, J.D. Vance, he was a senator running for vice president. He was on the Joe Rogan podcast. Joe Rogan had to give J.D. Vance a lecture. He gave him a 15-minute lecture on that podcast about veterans healing with psychedelics. J.D. Vance, to his credit, admitted stuff. He's like, what are you talking about? I didn't know about any of this stuff. And he's like, wait a minute. We have veterans leaving this country. They're crossing the border from San Diego to Mexico, and it'll help save their life. Why aren't we doing this? So J.D. Vance said that. Pete Hegseth. Now, a lot of people, your hands might start shaking. I really don't care. Pete Hegseth was on the Sean Ryan podcast, right? November of last year, right after the election. And he said what? Well, because Sean Ryan went to the same place I did, folks. He did the same medicines I did, and he had a similar experience. And Pete Hegseth, who wasn't the Secretary of Defense nominee yet, he said, yeah, man, I've never done it, obviously, but I have a lot of bros who did it. And I hear great things. Why aren't we doing this for our veterans? And finally, RFK, folks, RFK, when he was running for president as you're ready for it, Democrat. What did he say? I got to share this clip with you. Don't watch it right now, and you can watch it on your own, but it's put right here. Let me give you the cliff notes real quick. This is an incredibly powerful video question. So the guy asked him, so what's your opinion on psychedelics? There's the clip in the chat box. What did he say? He said, I am a recovering heroin addict. I'm a recovering alcoholic. When I hear the word psychedelics, it made me, roll my eyes. Like, what are you, stupid? You're replacing one bad thing with the next. And then sadly, my wife took her life in 2012. And then one of my boys, I knew he was done. He was next. He was destroyed. And a buddy of his grabbed him, put him on an airplane, and they went to Peru. And when they got home, and I saw my son, he said, I knew I had him back. So this guy in this clip, your eyes will well up. He said, I went from being, I can't believe people would even think about this, to why aren't we doing this for everybody? So the Vice President of the United States, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and 2 weeks ago, the President of the United States heard from the Secretary of Veterans Affairs about psychedelics and veterans. So, why did I just go on that little rant? So there's only one of two things is going to happen. Either we're going to get movement and this is going to explode, or they're going to forget about all of this and it's going to fail, which they're not going to be able to do because I will take a flamethrower to all of them. Okay? So This is essentially at this point a binary trade. This is either going to happen or it's not. But I got to share with you something that I haven't been to DC in 3 years. Why? Because it's gross. Let me tell you why. 2 years ago, no, 3 years ago, I was in DC. Rick Doblin. I don't know if you know who Rick Doblin is. He's tried to get MDMA approved for therapeutic use, and the FDA AdCom shot him down. Rick and I were walking around talking to senators and congressmen, and a Republican congressman who shall remain nameless told me behind closed doors, "Hey, Whiz, I love what you're doing, but you're going to have a problem with the big pharma and the alcohol and tobacco folks." And I looked at that guy and I'm like, ain't that your job? So at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, there are some powerful opponents lined up against all of this. Does everybody understand that, right? You get it. There is no money in healing. They do not want you healed. They want you hooked. There is a scale. Let me see if I can find it. There's a harm scale, right? It's harm. Let me find it here. There it is. This always blows people away. Like when people start doing psychedelics with you, it's crazy. You want to talk about crazy, folks? Look at your screen right now, please. Blue means harm to you. Red means harm to others. The most dangerous thing on this planet to you and another human is alcohol. My sister was killed by a drunk. One of the most least effective substances on this planet is psilocybin. My God, folks, alcohol, heroin, crack, methamphetamine, coke, tobacco, 100% legal, 100% legal, felonies. Felonies down here, folks, legal over here. Well, a couple of them are legal. Does that sit right with you? You guys cool with that? The definition, ladies and gentlemen, of a Schedule I drug in this country is no therapeutic use and a high risk of addiction. That literally is the definition of alcohol and tobacco. They are 100% legal. These things over here are Schedule I. I don't have to preach to the choir, ladies and gentlemen, but this is absolutely insane. It is wrong and it needs to change. Okay. Oh, how did I minimize my screen here? Let me get this thing open again. So there is potential explosive opportunity in this space, folks. It is just, I can't, I don't want to oversell it. I don't want to undersell it, but ladies and gentlemen, this is how you can potentially make a ton of money and help others. And I don't want to alarm you folks, but I've been helping a ton of veteran pilots. I'm talking airline captains and first officers who have been hiding their alcohol or self-medicating or their trauma. If I gave you a choice, folks, the captain, first officer flying you from LA to New York, would you rather them keep lying to the FAA, self-medicating, being depressed? Or would you let them take a week off to go get their mind, body, and soul right? I know the answer to everybody on this planet would say, right? So there are some pretty significant things lined up against us. But when I see the president, the vice president, the SecDef, the SecVet Affairs, and the HHS secretary saying, why aren't these medicines legal for therapeutic use? Something is going to give. Okay. And like I said, here's what's funny is everybody know, Governor Rick Perry, Republican, two-term governor from Texas, doesn't get any more Texas or Republican than that. He was, energy secretary under Trump. He stole one of my taglines. Governor Perry says, 5 years ago, if I saw me on stage advocating for psychedelics, I would have kicked my own ass, but here I am. So ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the most bipartisan things that I've seen in years. Last week, when I was in Washington, D.C., you ready for this? Literally, when I was meeting with the VA secretary, that same day, last Wednesday, two lawmakers sent a letter to the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. You know who one of them was? Lieutenant General Jack Bergman. This guy is a three-star Marine general, retired, obviously, congressman from Michigan. The other one was Lou Correa. They run the PATH caucus, the Congressional Psychedelic Advancing Therapies caucus. We're encouraged by your remarks about psychedelics, and we'd like to meet with you. Folks, this was when I was at the VA on Wednesday. They got this letter. This is a bipartisan initiative. When's the last time you heard the word bipartisan and make your eyes roll, because it literally wasn't? So, folks, I am absolutely blown away. I am convinced of the healing power of these medicines, and I'm convinced you can potentially make money and profit. Now, you shouldn't feel gross when I say that, right? I felt gross in Wall Street. I made more money in a bonus than I think I've made in my life. You know how that made me feel? Like crap. Now that I can make more money than I've ever made in my life and help people heal, folks, this is the definition of a self-licking ice cream cone. This is a win-win, the psychedelic space. But again, let me remind you with that 1999, the pets.com type of thing, man, because it really is. I'm telling you, man, these things could explode or they could go bust. But like we talked about, there are some infrastructure trades you can do instead, right? But let me, as we start to wrap up here in a little bit, let me remind you, they're not going to let this happen. The genie's already out of the bottle, man. At the Psychedelic Science Convention a couple years ago in Denver, the place was packed. 15,000 people, Republican governors, athletes, Aaron Rodgers and all sorts of stuff like that. There was people in like khaki pants and polo shirts. I'm like, they look like feds, or they look like big pharma executives, and you really can't tell the difference, can you? Ladies and gentlemen, big pharma spent $35 billion last year advertising on essentially news programs. Why? Because they don't want negative stories to come from said news programs, right? So, exactly. You and I agree here. So, but I will remind you right now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a we the people moment. This is not going to come from DC down. This is coming from we the people up. I don't think too much of myself, to be honest with you, folks. I know Marcus Luttrell doesn't think too much of himself. But if mom and pop walking down the street is like, wait a minute, a Navy fighter pilot, a Navy SEAL, these people are sitting with these medicines and it's working, maybe there's something to it. And before, I'll tell you how you can get access to one of our portfolios with all these stocks and stuff like that. Let me tell you about this guy right here. If you're a hockey fan, how about my Panthers? If you're a hockey fan, you know this guy, Daniel Carcillo, Chicago Blackhawk, two-time Stanley Cup champ. If you Google Daniel Carcillo fight, watch some of the YouTube videos. He's the guy with the blood on his jersey and no teeth. I mean, this guy was a goon. 7 diagnosed concussions. He was done. Suicidal, drugs, alcohol, ready to leave his wife and his kids with a bullet with a gun in his mouth type of thing. Got on an airplane, saved and changed his life. Now, he and I are partners. We actually opened, let me share with you. Thank you to the great states of Oregon and Colorado. And now New Mexico. Thank you to those states, because these medicines are illegal, at least at a state level. So, because it would infuriate me, folks, getting on an airliner to go to Mexico or Costa Rica to heal our veterans. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to announce we've done 3 or 4 in Colorado and 3, I think, in Oregon at Daniel's place. It's called Experience Onward. And yeah, you can be a civilian doing this, and it's beautiful. It's a great place, beautiful stuff like that. So that, if you're interested in maybe investing in Experience Onward, I think Daniel is looking for potential new investors as well in that, because he already has a big partner who just joined, who's already looking at properties in Colorado, and we're also looking at properties in New Mexico. Folks, why am I on this tangent? Because we are leading this. It ain't coming from DC. It's going to have to be a we the people moment, getting us airborne. Does that make sense? All right, real quick. I want to keep my brother David on time here. So when I started this brief, you're like, what the hell is this guy going to talk about? I can make money and save lives. Do you got it? Now do you understand? Making money is great. Don't get me wrong, folks, but making money with a purpose, profit with a purpose is the way to go. Okay? So if you want to get airborne, there's a couple things you can do. Well, I already briefed you on literally at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Dr. Deborah Mash from Demorex is going to be given a brief. You can swing by that if you're interested. Obviously, free brief. She's looking for investors. This round, you don't have to be an accredited investor, but after they close this round, you would have to be an accredited investor. That always infuriates me, folks, that a government $37 trillion in debt is going to tell you how you can invest your money. Do me a favor, not do me a favor, do you a favor. You have got to listen to my podcast with Dr. Mash from a couple months ago. I explained my ibogaine journey, and she talks through the science behind it. And well, Whiz, here's the ones and zeros and the beakers that you make fun of. Let me give you the link to this podcast. You should absolutely watch this podcast or listen to it. You can listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, all those type of places. But if you're a visual person, you can watch that podcast right there. Strongly recommend you do or listen to it before the brief tomorrow, so you're kind of up to speed with what you're doing. So you could potentially do that, or let me just throw this offer at you. It's the price of a bottle of wine. I don't drink anymore, so I should probably change what I say. It's I don't know. It's a nice night at the movies with the way everything's going nowadays. So it's called AR. I'm going to accelerate your retirement. These names, when, not if they explode, are going to help you retire young, ladies and gentlemen. It's only $960 a year, or I'm going to give you a break at $96 a month. When I used to drink, that was a cheap bottle of wine. I don't anymore, so we'll say it's a night at the movies. Okay, Whiz, I hear your AR brief is every Wednesday at 10 a.m. I work at Wednesday at 10 a.m. Don't worry about it. I send out time-sensitive alerts. We have an app. We have email alerts. We do all sorts of stuff to keep you in the loop. And then after the live trade brief, I throw the replay up on the member page. It's about 30 minutes after the brief. It takes about 30 minutes for that to replay, for the replay to render. Chris, I'm so geeked. I've been a subscriber for almost 3 years now, and this is the first time I've been able to attend live. I only know you from the replays. Today, since I love my brother David, I'm going to hook you up with our manuals, our primary, intermediate, and advanced manuals. If you go to my homepage right now and try and buy these, all three of them, you're spending $197. So you just made what, 101 bucks or whatever it is. These are included. You keep them for the rest of your life. So today you're going to get access to my AR brief every Wednesday at 10 a.m., our alert system, obviously, the manuals, and access to what we call our Ready Room. We have an online forum where you can talk to me, your fellow traders, back and forth. It's a pretty cool value add. But if you want to test fly it, Whiz, I'm not ready for a full commitment to an annual whatever. Don't. Do it for a couple months and then shoot me an email that says, Whiz, I'd love to upgrade into an annual and save a little bit of money. That's the way to go. So let me give you the link to this, or David already beat me to it because he's a good wingman and provides mutual support. Like I said, $96 a month or $960 per year. Hey, again, don't do me a favor, do you a favor. We have 7 sessions called Options Weapons School. If you're sitting here going, bro, you had me at buy a stock and then you lost me at trade the options, I will teach you how to trade options in our 7 briefs, okay? 7 briefs. Brief 1, this is an option, this is a call, this is a put, all the way up to session 7, where you become a Jedi master. Let me just go show you what that looks like real quick in our member area. Members, click on that right there, or I'm sorry, learning. And down here in the bottom right, it says Options Weapons School. This is where you can go watch all of this training. Boom. Start watching. There you go. Over here on the right, you can see, obviously, session 1 comes up right there. And then session 2, session 3, all the way down to session 7. Folks, I see other way below average places charging thousands of dollars for their options trading, and it sucks. This is just a value add. It's only $297, folks, not a couple grand in some other places that shall not be named, and the training is awful. But yeah, here's what the ready room looks like. This is where we post our intel and commentary, and you guys can communicate and get back and forth with me and all that type of stuff. Okay. Yeah, I can post that. Yeah, this is the link to join for tomorrow's investment brief with Demorex. She is developing her medicine to treat AUD, alcohol use disorder. Okay, AUD is alcohol use disorder, and they're looking for this round. I think they're looking for angel investors. So you can come check out her brief tomorrow. She's been working with Ibogaine since I put gold wings on my chest as a naval aviator in 1993. And not just to put a bow on it, Ibogaine saved and changed my life, period. Over on our YouTube channel, the No Fallen Heroes YouTube channel, you can go look at a ton of these stories from veterans, first responders, and family members who have healed with these medicines. It's just absolute stories. I want to end on a high note. Well, this is a high note. We also have, sadly, a lot of veterans who never saw combat who experienced trauma just as bad, called MST, military sexual trauma. I mean, you expect the enemy to try and shoot and kill you. You don't expect your squadron mate. But I'm so thankful to say that we have helped a lot of female and, sadly, male veterans who have experienced MST. Dr. Matthew Johnson from Johns Hopkins doing some great research. That's a great one right there. Very, very good resource if you're interested in this space and learning more about these medicines. This badass lady right here, she was an F-14 Tomcat backseater, 7 deployments. Talk about being an underachiever. She got out and became a doctor. I took her to Costa Rica. The first 2 female fighter pilots I took to Costa Rica 3 years ago, and now she's our chief medical officer. Real quick, folks, I appreciate it. I guarantee I blew a lot of you guys away like, oh my God, I came to an investing brief and we're talking about psychedelics. Folks, open your mind a little bit. Trust me, I'm going to, Governor Rick Perry stole my quote. I'm going to steal it back. 5 years ago, Whiz, if I heard me in an investing brief talking about this, I would have kicked my own ass. But that guy died on a mattress on a home in Mexico. And I will never look back. I am so thankful. I've never been a better husband, father, or human being. And I wasn't, to be honest with you, folks. It cured a lot of childhood trauma, and it cured a lot of military trauma. David, my brother, thank you for having me. I want to keep you on time and on target, as it is my job and my responsibility. So thanks, David. I appreciate it. And looking forward to talking to everybody who wants to potentially profit while also having a purpose. Fights on.